chronic stress is one of the leading causes of the six main killers in the world today, including cardiac issues, cancer. All of these things are caused by chronic stress. The sky breath has been proven to reduce chronic stress in practitioners in as little as 2 weeks. And the impact of that lingers. Actually, there was a study that was done at the Palo Alto VA for many veterans who had served in Vietnam and Iraq and were struggling with PTS. And what the research shows is that even after the first practice of this breathing technique, their level of serum cortisol falls by more than half. And with a regular practice, for those who practice this over a period of time, you find that your regular level of cortisol, the stress hormone, is already like below half of somebody who doesn't practice this.
Today I spoke with Ajay Tejasvi, and boy, what a great conversation if you're someone who is stressed, anxious, perhaps worried about your health or food. He is a wonderful resource who's influencing health through this very specific meditation paired with breathwork technique known as sky meditation. What's really fascinating about this technique is there are a number of trials showing that this technique can reduce stress, be helpful even for PTSD, reduce inflammation. So they've done a wonderful job through the Art of Living Institute of researching and also implementing this technique, which we'll talk more about during the body of the show today, everywhere from leadership down through a veteran who has had PTSD. So on a broad level, influencing multiple people, down to the one person in need of help themselves. Very kind, very smart, very caring individual. And I feel this conversation was chock full of reminders that we all need, myself included, to slow down, be present, enjoy people, connection, and your life. And again, with the sky breath technique, it's an additional option, especially if meditation for you has been challenging because you sit there and you say, oh, my mind just won't stop spinning and racing. When you combine breath with the meditation, it gives you something to focus on. Like I said, they have a number of trials demonstrating benefit. We'll now go to what I found to be a very helpful reminder conversation with Ajay. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Today I have Ajay with me, and we are going to be talking all about the first brain. Conversely, we usually talk on the show about the second brain, the gut. But I think many in our audience appreciate how important both of these are. That stress can flare IBS as one example. But IBS, if that flares, let's say maybe from a food reaction, can lead to things like stress, anxiety, and depression. So Ajay's been doing some really amazing work on both a micro and macro scale with mindfulness, meditation, even permeating to things like leadership. So Ajay, very, very glad to have you here and curious to speak more.
Thanks a lot, Michael. It's very exciting to be here with you all, and fascinated by your work with the second brain. It's been known for centuries, actually, in yoga about how the health of your gut directly impacts the state of your mind, and so
Right.
this sort of path-breaking work that you're doing through modern science is so much needed. So very excited to be part of this conversation.
Yeah, and it's always reassuring when you see more ancient forms of healthcare, hitting on some of these bedrock principles that, the guts, the second brain, going all the way back to Hippocrates, various inception points of yoga. So it makes me feel good about the work that we're collectively doing and kind of covering both sides of the spectrum. And I'd love for you to tell people a little bit about what you do, because your background is pretty eclectic and very interesting. And I don't know if I could do it full justice. So maybe you can give us the synopsis of what you've been doing in the world.
For me, it's been a very interesting journey, Michael. Um, my technical education brought me by the way of being an engineer, exploring a little bit of artificial intelligence and how technology can be used to then help overall growth and development in parts of the world that are lesser developed. And through that road, I stumbled upon the whole aspect of leadership and how leadership can help transform societies. And during that whole journey, there was this common thread that led me to look within. And so this is the work that I've been doing with the Art of Living Foundation as well, which offers practical tools and methods and some simple sutras or simple ideas that helps one look within and see how an individual who is healthy, who is confident, who is compassionate, can transform the lives of so many millions of people around them, even more than millions, even just their own families, their own loved ones around them, and how that can then impact a larger macrocosm. And so, in this entire journey, the focus has been on the individual. How can the individual be at their best? And this brought me to the techniques of the art of living, the sky breath meditation, which is a breath based meditation. It uses various patterns, various rhythms of the breath to help bring the mind to the present moment. And when the
Mm,
mind is with us, when the mind is your friend, your partner, then you can truly take on the world. Um, and the converse is true as well, isn't it? When your mind is not in such a pleasant place, then you feel like everything is against you. So,
sure.
how do you practically get there? And that is what I've learned from my work with the art of living as well.
Love it. And I love the idea of combining meditation with breath work because one of the things I feel and have observed some people struggle with when you give them a recommendation of meditation, right? They might be stressed, they may not have much free time in the day, and you can see they need something to just calm them down, focus them, center them. And they say, well, I just can't. I try to meditate and my mind is just spinning away. So something that can be sort of a little bit active I think can help focus those people. So I'm really curious to unpack and explain that more to people. But I did want to backtrack for 1 second and just reinforce the importance of something that you said. We had someone recently join our team who used to work at a different healthcare company. And even though it was a very large company, and admittedly, sometimes from the outside looking in, you can't help but wonder, like, wow, maybe that larger company is just so well run and that's why they're big. And I mean, sure, I mean, you if you're running with someone who's really fast, you can sort of be inspired by their speed. If you're looking at a big company, you can be inspired by their size, perhaps. However, what I learned from this employee was that the company was quite toxic and the culture was very unhealthy. And it all emanated from the CEO, who just had this very negative, narcissistic, chaotic way he conducted himself, and that just permeated the entire company. And she shared with me that they had a very difficult time retaining some of the talents, the very smart people, because it was just a very toxic, abrasive environment. So, to your point, I think as individuals, whether we're leading a big company or a family, you as that person interfacing is going to have such a big impact on everyone in the sphere that you influence.
This just playing a little bit more on that last point that you made, right? The individual and the role of the individual. It's so critical, isn't it? I mean, for us, how we perceive life, how we observe within ourselves, and how we express ourselves is what we have, isn't it? Um, and when your perception is clouded, when you have stress, when you have all of this anxiety, then you're not taking the world in the right way. You're not taking it for what it is. And then what happens with that is that even your observation within you, like the things that you process within, is flawed, isn't it? And when that is also flawed, then the way you express yourself is bound to be flawed. And so these three aspects, perception, observation, and expression, when they are in a good place, then you are living life at your fullest, at your best, right? And it is in that space you can also create these positive uh, or virtuous cycles of positivity, of peace around you. um, and what you just described seems like a completely the converse, right? A vicious cycle of negativity, which which comes from one individual not being able to take in and express herself or himself appropriately.
Yeah,
Um,
no, I mean, I couldn't agree more. And I think about all the various ways this could manifest, shifting maybe to a mother who same thing is happening in terms of her perception. The child does something that's annoying And there's two ways you can meet that, just like an employee with an employer with an employee. You could process it, understand where the sort of error or frustrating behavior is coming from, and then respond with kindness and sort of build someone up and lead them through a positive redirect in the direction that you want them to go. And all those micro interactions will either build someone up or could really start just like chopping them down. And so if it's an employee, they become a little bit reclusive and withdrawn. Or if it's a child, God forbid, their confidence starts to suffer, or maybe they start treating other people like that. So I couldn't agree more. The implications for this, in my view, are really vast.
Absolutely. And see, you so beautifully wove these different aspects, right? We don't live life in compartments,
Mm,
right? What happens at work impacts us what happens at home. So as a mother, she's working her day job, then she goes back home and she has her home job as well. I mean, mother is really a shout out. I really appreciate what my mother did for me and what she continues to do for me, which is
same.
continue to remind me that, we're beings of both head and heart,
Mm,
that we have both of these within us. And how we nurture one another, how we care for one another is what makes us human. And she
mm.
keeps reminding me that for my two boys as well, because boys and kids in general are naughty, right? They like to explore, do different things,
Sure.
and at times you tend to forget that they're still children. So how do you keep that awareness? How do you remain aware, and how do you connect with them on that heart to heart level? And
Yep.
this is where I feel that all of these techniques, right, the breath, the meditation, all of these play a vital role in I would say rewiring you. Otherwise we're so wired, right? We're tightly wound. How do you relax and take life as it comes? How do you take life with a smile? And that's a practice, and that practice comes by understanding a little bit more about the inner workings of our primary brain, of our nervous system as well, and how what we eat and how our whole environment impacts that as well is part of this whole art of living.
Mm.
And so it brings all of these different aspects that we were talking about, Michael.
And I love the way you describe that as a practice, meaning, let's say right now you're taking stock of this conversation and saying to yourself, boy, my digestion doesn't feel super healthy. This conversation about maybe not handling certain tension points in conversation also doesn't seem super healthy. That's okay. It's a practice where you might be akin to someone who hasn't ran in a long time. And so you're deconditioned. But you can be, right? Every day you start exercising or start tending to these things mentally and physiologically, you get a little bit better. And it's a constant practice of, like, with fitness, you're never done, right? You're never done being in good physical shape, because as soon as you stop, your body starts to regress. So it's something that can be built into your day to day. Again, as you said, very, I think, amply so as a practice.
Absolutely. And here's where I think remembering that the body and the mind work on opposite paradigms is really helpful. As you just mentioned, for the body to be in peak condition, effort is needed. You need to eat right. You need to eat all of the different, the rainbow of foods, the rainbow of vegetables and fruits. You need to exercise, obviously. There's effort needed in that, isn't it? Um, but for the mind to be in peak condition, you need to learn how to let go, how to relax. Because when you push the mind to do something, it rebels naturally, isn't it? Like you may be in a really important meeting and you're trying to tell your mind to focus. It tends to do its own thing, doesn't it? It says, "Huh, I can do this later. I'm sure the notes will come." Or we've all done this, right? We've tried to sleep. I have a flight to catch in the morning. I really need to sleep. And I'm like, go to sleep. And it doesn't happen. So the mind works on an opposite paradigm. In the realm of the mind, what you resist persists. So understanding these contrary natures of the mind and the body is a good step towards being able to live life at its peak performance, I would say.
Sure. I mean, there's a just really quick to piggyback on that. There's a parallel concept that we discuss in the clinic sometimes, which is addition through subtraction. Because some people come in on so many supplements, on such a restrictive diet. The key, in some cases, I'm not saying all, but in some, to improve is relaxing the diet a little bit, relaxing or using less supplementation. So I think it's a very good point.
And Michael, I'm sure in your practice as well, you've seen, right? The state of your mind also impacts the level of inflammation in your body. So the more stressed you are, it impacts your immunity. It impacts your inflammatory response, isn't it? Um, so what scientists are finding these days is that meditation and this breath work, the sky breath meditation, over 100 plus independent studies over the last 40 years on this technique. Um, it's how it helps from the very first practice itself. It just relaxes the entire nervous system and consequently the entire physiological system as well. So the whole body relaxes with just a little bit 10-15 minutes of breathing every day.
And by the way, if this has been helpful, please comment and subscribe. This really does help us reach more people who are trying to improve their health. So it is quite deeply appreciated. Tell us more about this sky breath, because and maybe this is me being a touch ignorant to what's been going on in the world of breath work, but I haven't heard of this before. It makes a lot of sense to me, at least conceptually, trying to pair meditation with breath, especially for the more cat type personalities that have a hard time sitting still. So please say more.
Yeah, so Michael, the sky breath meditation stands for Sudarshan Kriya Yoga. So Sudarshan in Sanskrit means proper vision, and Kriya is action. So proper vision through the purifying action of the breath. And yoga in Sanskrit means to join. Join what? Join the mind, which is doing its own thing, flying around all the time, to the present moment, using the breath. So this was a technique that was created or cognized by Gurudev, Sri Ravi Shankar of the Art of Living, the founder of the Art of Living, way back in the early 80s, in 81.
Hmm.
And since then, this program, it's a 8-hour program that is spread over 3 days. Typically, you learn it on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, couple of hours each day, maybe even 6 to 8 hours, depending on where you are. Um, and you learn a set of different breathing techniques that you practice on a daily basis. And it takes about 20 minutes in the morning. And because you're using the breath, it helps harmonize the emotions, the thoughts with your body. And at the end of it, it takes you to a natural state of meditation where the thoughts have calmed down, the mind is clear, and in that state of clarity, you're able to, really perceive, as I shared in the beginning, perception, observation, and expression, all of these are in a better place. And with that greater energy, when you don't have to deal with all the clutter inside your mind, all of the interference, you're able to then take on so much more. Even if something was taking you like 20 minutes or 30 minutes to complete a task, you find that when you're present, when your mind is there, you're able to do it in a shorter time and you don't make as many mistakes. So it's been really fascinating. And this program is offered in more than 180 countries today, Michael. So
Wow.
it's something that a lot of volunteers have taken up. This is a completely volunteer run organization, The Art of Living. Um,
Hmm.
and it has over 35,000 instructors around the world.
How do people learn this?
So both online, this is something that we learned that we could teach breathwork online during the pandemic, and also in person. So we have centers around the world. For instance, here I am in our Washington D.C. center, which is on Meridian Hill, just a mile from the White House. So we have places around the country, around the U.S. and around the
Yeah.
world.
We need you
So.
there. Absolutely. And you remind me of something that Cal Newport has brought to the forefront. He's certainly not the first person to say this, but that deep work or focused work is vastly more effective than interrupted work. And in his book of the same name, Deep Work, he discusses multiple studies wherein researchers would do some sort of minimal interrupt of someone working on a task in one group and non interrupted in the other group. And even one small, like a, hey, do you want coffee? That is enough to measurably decrease efficacy of whatever task the person is working on. So I would bring this up a level to the people who are saying, oh, I'm just so busy, I can't meditate. Well, if you're busy working for, let's say, 10 hours of a day, you might actually have a, let's use arbitrary numbers here, but a 5% gain in efficiency over those 8 hours. So does that justify 10, 15, 20 minutes? I don't know, and maybe some research has looked at this, but I would be inclined to think you would be at a net productivity gain by taking some time to center through the sky meditation or any other work that sort of makes you more mindful.
Absolutely, Michael. And just to add to that, we have a lot of research that has shown this very fact. Um,
Mm.
Today, thanks to smartphones and all of these different notifications that we get every second minute or every second, um, our attention span, can you guess what our average attention span is today?
I know it's paltry. Is it something south of 60 seconds? I want to say like 32.
Actually, it's like 15 seconds or 13
Wow.
seconds is what researchers say. Between 13 and 15 seconds is all you have.
Wow.
20 years ago, it used to be that you used to be able to focus on something for at least 20, 25 minutes. Um, but somehow that attention span has really come down. And with that, also, I feel like the depth of our life, you were just talking a little bit more about deep work, right? Um, and that translates into every aspect of our life, unfortunately. See, at this point, it feels like life is just being lived at the periphery or at the surface. We're not even going deep within ourselves or like within anything to understand what it is. Um, and what this is about is taking a pause, taking a moment to pause and say, hey, who am I really? What am I really here for? What do I really want? And
Yeah.
and we don't take that time, isn't it? See, we say hi to each other. We say, how are you? Do we really mean it? You say
Sure.
bye, have a nice day. Do you really mean it? And how does it feel when somebody you love, your let's say your grandmother or your loved one says,
Mm.
have a nice day or I love you? There's something
Yeah.
with that, right? There's a presence that comes with it. There's that energy that you transfer from one to another. But you don't see that same thing. I mean, you're getting off a plane, somebody says, have a nice day. It's not the same feeling, isn't it? So, as human beings, we are beings of both head and heart, isn't it? So how do we really explore the fullness of our humanity if we continue to just stay at this level where we just are addicted to the next dopamine high by
Right.
that flip or whatever, right? So that's where this breath has a unique capacity to cut through because, like you rightly pointed out, you can tell people to meditate, but they close their eyes and all they can hear is more noise. But the breath, you can't say I'll breathe for later, right? The breath is right now, and it's been with us ever since we were born to the moment we leave this body.
Sure.
So learning how to use these patterns really not only helps us physiologically, but also mentally. And there's a lot of research to prove that, to support that as well these days.
Can you say more about any of the research that you find compelling? I know a facet of our audience is quite keen on research and what it can teach us. So I know there's a lot to maybe pick from, but anything that you think is worth discussion.
So three things, and I think these are some things that are very relevant to the times as well, right? One is mental health, mental well-being, and stress management. And a number of research papers and over the last 12 years or so show how chronic stress is one of the leading causes of the six main killers in the world today, including cardiac issues, cancer. All of these things are caused by chronic stress. And chronic stress triggers inflammation in the body, right? All of this is linked to inflammation. So the sky breath has been proven to reduce chronic stress in practitioners in as little as 2 weeks. And the impact of that lingers. Actually, there was a study that was done at the Palo Alto VA for many veterans who had served in Vietnam and Iraq. and were struggling with PTS. And what the research shows is that even after the first practice of this breathing technique, their level of serum cortisol falls by more than half. And with a regular practice, for those who practice this over a period of time, you find that your regular level of cortisol, the stress hormone, is already like below half of somebody who doesn't practice this. So that's just one example. The other thing is improved sleep. And we all know the impact sleep has on a number of different things, right, in our lives. We know we need sleep for regeneration, and a record number of Americans today are struggling with this. I would say around the world, people are struggling with sleep, thanks to all of the different uh, diversions that we face today in life. So the sky breath helped you release or helps you release these stresses, these anxieties, these toxins through the breath, even on a physiological level, and allows the mind to settle in itself for better quality of sleep, better quality of rest. Deep sleep, researchers found, was markedly improved in people who
Hmm.
practice the sky meditation.
And did it
And
matter? Does it need to be proximal to bed, or is it any time during the day it'll have that benefit for sleep?
anytime during the day. And typically,
Hmm.
we recommend you do this practice in the morning before you start. And we have at the Art of Living, we have a complementary practice called the Sahaj Samadhi meditation, which is an effortless meditation technique. You just sit down, and observe the thoughts. And there's a particular technique that is taught to you as well in that module. But what it doesn't matter what time of day you do it. Actually, we recommend you do this in the morning, so because it energizes you and also relaxes you. So what another research paper found, another study found, was that you found heightened alpha and beta activity in the brain as well. And what scientists said was that this was a state of relaxed alertness. So you were relaxed and not like wound up, but alert at the same time.
Sure. And this is important. I've shared this podcast on the podcast or the story on the podcast before, but early in my career, I was working at a doctor's office, very nice guy, but was incredibly reactive. And I could see in him just the process of being ground down because just all day was sort of this pinball of reactivity, reactivity, reactivity. And even though I was early in my career, it stood out to me that, boy, if this gentleman could just spend some time not reacting and thinking about, well, what are the two or three systems errors upstream that are causing all these things I have to react to and all these fires that I need to put out, his life would be palpably, measurably better. And I never saw that shift because he was always sort of locked in fight or flight. And I'll give him credit. He had a lot of energy, but boy, talk about a way to invest your time and focus inefficiently and just always being playing this proverbial game of whack-a-mole that never seems to end.
I think just to build on that, right? There's research that's also happening with the veterans right now, and one of the researchers, Major Carter, he says that what he's found the sky does is it flips or it keeps you in your wizard brain rather than flipping onto the lizard brain or the reptilian part of our existence, which is in that same fight or flight response, the reactiveness. But it brings up this point, right? Are you living life in a reactive mode, or are you responding to situations? Are you able to take that gap between the impulse and your action? Is it a
Right,
reaction or is it a
right.
response? Personally, I found that this helped me expand that rather than, if somebody says something that's uncomfortable for me, rather than shooting off a text right away or like sending an email right away, which I'm bound to regret later. And we all do this,
Absolutely.
right?
We've,
We do
we've all done
something
that.
in
Yeah,
the reactive. It gives me a little bit more time. So I'm able to respond to that situation rather than react to it, as you were sharing.
sure,
Um,
sure. No, couldn't agree more. So, with the sky technique, is this something within the technique broadly? Are there a few sort of sub practices that people learn, three, four, five, however many tools, and they can use a certain tool at a certain time? Or can you say a little bit more about what people learn and how they implement? I mean, I know it's an 8 hour course, so it might be a lot to unpack, but are there a few themes that we can, I guess, tease people with to motivate them, hopefully, to learn more?
Happy to share, Michael. Um, at the very beginning of the program, we're taught about how uh, there are different layers of our existence, different aspects to our own existence. Um, and really understanding that helps us look at this life from a different perspective. That we're not just, you know, who are we really? I mean, are we this body? Are we the breath? Because where is the life? Is the life in the breath, or is it in the body, or is it in the air? So some of these reflective questions, right? Are we the body? Are we the breath? Are we this mind? See, you're seeing through your eyes, you're hearing me through your ears, you speak through your mouth, but what is it that's behind those senses? What is the mind really? So understanding a little bit about the dynamics of the mind, and then looking into some of the finer aspects of our existence. What is this memory of mine? What is this intellect of mine that says yes, no? What is this ego? What have you had this experience, right? You feel uncomfortable in a place, or there's a new meeting, there's a new person you're going to meet, there's something that's happening with your heart starts racing. What is it? What is it about me? But as a kid, you didn't have that, right? You would just go play with anybody on the field, right? What is it that makes it feel a little unnatural? And what is behind all of these experiences that is saying, hey, something within me, don't you feel, Michael, something within you that hasn't changed? Your body, this body has changed. You know, maybe people around you you feel have changed, but something within you, what is that frame of reference from which you see that everything is changing, right? Otherwise, if everything is changing all the time, how do you see the change, right? So, what is that? And that we would say is the self, right? Or the soul. So, understanding these different, unpacking the different aspects of our existence and looking a little bit into the sources of energy, right? What is it that weighs us down in life? And why is it that you're not able to give life your best? And you say, sometimes you feel low on energy. And so, what are the sources of that energy? So looking a little bit into that, and food is a major source of that energy, isn't it? So being able to eat right, having the right sort of um, nutrition in your life,
Right,
the right time, and you
right.
speak so much about this, right? Uh, so understanding that aspect, what are the sources of our energy, and then looking at the breath as a big source of our energy, right?
Mm,
And how this breath, researchers found that just in the same way, our emotions impact the body through the breath. You've seen this, right? When you're angry, how's your breath?
sure. Yeah. Short, tight.
Short, right?
Yeah,
And when you're happy, there's a different breath. So, in the same way, researchers found that you can impact the state of your mind using the breath. And
sure.
so, understanding this correlation between the breath and the mind, and then learning a few techniques, and it's layered on. You learn a foundational technique in terms of the way to breathe, even, right? As a baby, when you see a baby breathing, when it takes a breath in, the stomach inflates all the way, doesn't it? And then the chest expands, and then when you breathe out, the stomach falls in and the chest falls in. Often what's happened to us because of our stress is when we breathe in, we pull our stomach in, and we tighten up. And so, just even when you remind people of this, it flips a switch in them. It flips that part of your parasympathetic nervous system, and you start breathing normally again. And so, understanding these subtleties. So that's why it takes a little bit of time, 6 to 8 hours, where we walk people through and it's more experience, Michael. It's what's happening within me. You reflect on your own experience. It's not so much talk, but you do get a few pointers, on how to handle the mind when it feels like the whole world is against you. You
Sure.
find some little pointers.
And I can vouch through my own experience using similar but different tools. And I'm actually excited to learn more about this and sort of start plugging in recommendations to this technique for our patient population. But with similar tools that we've used, whether it be there's a cognitive behavioral therapy app that's been helpful. Asha Gupta has what's known as the Gupta program, which is this limbic retraining. For some people, gosh, does that help them? And I think especially it's the people for whom there's a significant component, just, in the sliver of the world I'm working, there's fear of food, there's fear of having a regression of their symptoms. And sometimes
Mm.
it's the fear of the thing that's actually quite worse than the thing itself they're worried about. And when people get on board into some of these techniques, they're a different person when we see them a few weeks later.
Absolutely. Um, and I think the beauty of these techniques, including the art of living, is in bringing them back to that space, right? Hey, who am I really? And I'm beyond this, right? I'm more than this. And understanding the true nature of ourselves. And that, yes, what I eat becomes me, isn't it? In Sanskrit, there is this saying, it says, Annam Brahma. It's like the food is the divine. Because the
Mm,
food becomes me, the food becomes who I am. And so paying attention to what you put within you is a big part of yoga. It's a big part of understanding who we are, who I am. And so I think this holistic approach to health is very much needed. I've seen, and this is something that I've brought up to many of my friends who are doctors as well. You go, you have a surgery in the hospital, and the food that's available to you right after that is probably a hamburger or like
yeah,
some deep
Jello,
fries
sure,
or like a
right.
French toast, something that's completely contrary to what you just had. I mean, somebody, a loved one that I know, went in for a heart operation, and when he came out, they offered him a big piece of steak. So it's contrary, isn't it, to health, to healthy living. So I think this whole awareness about nutrition and gut health, I think it's so essential. So um, it's wonderful that you're creating so much awareness about this.
And I
In
really appreciate what you said about food being the divine. And I'll just underscore that for some in our audience who might be skirting around the edges or even fully within the throes of this really fearful perspective of food. And I get it, right? If you notice foods trigger you, then it will shift your perspective to be more vigilant. But ultimately, food is really, like you said, the life. That's how you rebuild yourself. So finding that balance of awareness of some triggers, but being careful not to, as I've said before, kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater and just keep cutting foods and cutting foods and cutting foods and developing this sort of adversarial perspective regarding the foods that we eat.
absolutely, food is your friend. And
Ideally,
here
yeah,
again, when your mind is your friend, then everything else is your friend.
right.
See, this mind is your biggest friend and can also be your worst enemy. So, understanding how to manage this mind is so critical. And this is where a lot of things help, right? One is obviously these techniques, right? The breathing, the meditation, um, also good company. I think having a support
Yeah,
system
yeah, yeah.
of friends, of people who know that they really care for you. So, I think both of these things are important.
And that's a good segue into one of the other questions I wanted to ask. I think we've hit on a number of these, but common mistakes that people are making and maybe some corresponding solution. We've hit awareness, I think, and just having the time and the space not to react, but to maybe just act rather than react is one way we could perhaps phrase that. Good company, as you just mentioned. Are there any other commonalities you see in terms of themes of problems or challenges people are grappling with and solutions?
Michael, here's where I think, Gurudev's approach to leadership and human values really makes a lot of sense to me. He talks about awareness. First, the awareness of our own patterns, of our own mind, of our own emotions, of our own thoughts. Um, and because unless you're aware of them, you're not able to really connect with the person next to you because there's so much happening within yourself. So awareness is the first step. And then comes belongingness with that awareness. You understand how interconnected we all are. I'm dependent on the farmer who grew this cotton. I'm dependent on the farmer who grew my apple this morning that I had, or the peanuts, or the almonds, right? So we're all so interconnected. I'm connected to the highway highway worker who built that road for me to come here. So you realize how interconnected this life on this
Mm.
planet is. And with that, you're able to expand your sense of belonging. And this I've seen time and again in successful societies, where you have that circle of belonging beyond just my own biological family. I feel a sense of connection to my neighbors. I feel a sense of connection to my community, to my city, to my country, and
Yep.
ultimately to the whole world, right? You feel that sense of belonging. And this is a big challenge in the world today. That sense of loss of connection, right? Feeling
Hmm.
lonely. And I think the
Yeah.
Surgeon General also spoke about this epidemic of loneliness that we're facing in this
Sure.
country and elsewhere in the world as well. And with that awareness of the belongingness, you then a commitment rises within you. And this is what we've seen time and again. You find that strength from within. You don't need to be motivated from the outside. You're
Mm.
inspired. You feel that sense of connection with one another and you want to give back. So there's a commitment to serve, a commitment to make life better for people who are less fortunate than you. Because
Mm.
a lot of this depression comes when you're only sitting and thinking about what about me, what about me, what about me, what will happen to me. When you think about the other, when you want to serve somebody else, that doesn't exist. You
Yeah.
realize that there's so many people around the world to whom you can be of use to. Gurudev often says that there's a very simple formula for depression. Just for 20 minutes, sit and think, what about me? What about me? And you'll feel so miserable.
Yeah.
But if you flip that around and say, hey, what can I do for this world? What can I do for you to serve? I think that opens up a whole different world of
Mm.
possibilities for us. And so these ABCs, I would say, Michael, can help us build the foundation for a happier society comprised of happy individuals as well.
Boy, and I'm assuming that lands for a lot of people in this audience because when someone is not feeling well, it's very easy to get sucked into everything regarding how you're feeling in the sphere of you. And you remind me of this Chinese proverb that essentially says, a little bit of fragrance always clings to the hand that gives you roses. So for those who do a good deed, there's always a little bit of benefit that you get yourself in doing that good deed. So I love that. And I hope that will motivate people to slow down a little bit, kind of in keeping with the earlier theme. And that might spur something as simple as having a conversation with someone who you see on your morning walk rather than being so hurried to where you can't talk. And little things like that, to your point, I think foster community and connection and less of a feeling like you are a person who is alone, even though there are others around, because it's always that very platitudinous, hi, how are you? Keep going. And you start to ask people questions and free up a little bit of time and space to connect and to learn something and ask a genuine question and have these connections that do, I would strongly agree, make life so much brighter because there's more to focus on other than just the self.
And there's so much beauty all around us, right? And this, I mean, this nature is constantly changing. Every morning, nature puts up such a beautiful show for us. And no two sunrises or sunsets are the same. The moon changes every day. There's so much beauty all around us. So when we are able to appreciate that, then I think that's a life worth living. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely agree. I mean, you could give someone a big house, a fancy car, a yacht, and if they were so stressed out they couldn't enjoy any of it, the person living modestly may actually have much more enjoyment in their life, not due to the things that they have, but the ability to enjoy. And there's this old saying, sorry for all the aphorisms, but he who is not contented with what he has would not be contented with what he wants.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's beautiful you brought that out as well. See, it is the state of our mind that determines the state of our life as well, is it? The quality of our life. So you can be happy in both situations. And I think that is a central a central tenet, I would say, in the art of living is that you bring that happiness to what you're doing already. You don't have to often we tend to postpone that happiness, right? When I get that mansion or when I get that job, I'll be happy. And during that time, what, you want to be miserable the whole time? You can be happy and do that, right? And it ensures that you'll get it even more. Because if you're miserable doing something, then who's going to want to work with you as well?
Sure, sure.
Yeah. So both of them go together beautifully. Yeah.
And speaking of work, I mean, just looking and coming back a little bit to the bio or your bio, you're working with children, with college students, with veterans, with those who have PTSD, with those in leadership. And so I think you're providing a nice case study in that this permeates people in all areas, like the veteran with PTSD all the way through the CEO. And I'm sure that's going to land for many people who are going through this conversation with us, which by the way has I've really enjoyed. Would you want to refer people anywhere? Is there a certain website or an Instagram? How do people start plugging in to get some of this awareness in their social feed, or if they're really hot to trot, they can go sign up for a training?
Absolutely. So I would, and thank you, Michael. I've completely enjoyed this conversation. Like you said, the art of living is something for anybody who breathes. All you need is to be able to
Right.
breathe, and you're a human being. That's it, right? And so very very simple prerequisites. You can look us up on www.artofliving.org. We're also on Instagram, where we share some inspirational tidbits like this every now and then, even conversations with very very interesting people like you, Michael. So people can find us on the website, on Instagram, and we're the nice part is we're all around the world. We're all around the US as well, and we're virtual as well. So
Great.
we can meet you wherever you are.
Perfect. Perfect. Any thoughts you want to leave people with?
One thing I would like to say is that, think of how, we think of investing, right? We think of spending money on things, and there's investing in our life, right? There are two different ways in which we spend our time or our money, right? We spend time and resources on certain activities, and then we invest some time and resources on other activities. I would say invest in yourself. Investing in yourself by learning ways in which you can manage your mind better, your emotions better. And when your mind and emotions, when your mind is your friend, then the whole world can be your friend. And so invest in yourself is what I would say.
Yeah, I think it is the best investment you can make.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, Ajay, thank you again, both for the conversation and all the work you're doing in the world. Again, we need it with all the distraction and the divisiveness that sometimes is secondary to the algorithms, sort of fueling outrage snippets, things that can get us to slow down, take a breath, re-find our connection to people and humanity is just so crucially important. So, many thank yous to you again.
Thank you, Michael. Pleasure speaking with you, getting to know your work as well. And I look forward to seeing you in person sometime soon.